Tonight, it's a race against time in Fleur-de-Lis. 2 people are dead, 1 has been rescued, another still missing.
Utter tragedy on the Baie Verte Peninsula. Mourning and worry for 2 communities, Fleur-de-Lis and Coachman's Cove.
Our biggest challenge right now is communication. There's no cell service in the area, so we're relying on radio communication and satellite communication with our assets.
The sea has brought us a lot of blessings, but it can be a cruel master at times.
That's ahead.
A nurse at a long-term care facility is off the job and under investigation after allegations of misconduct involving residents. And we'll show you how a robot is keeping shelves stocked and customers entertained at a St. John's supermarket.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin on the Baie Verte Peninsula, where 2 people are dead following the sinking of a commercial cod boat yesterday afternoon. 1 man survived, another is still missing. The Coast Guard says the search continues for that missing man, with efforts focusing on the shoreline. Regional Supervisor Mark Gould says crews are keeping the man's family top of mind.
Communication with the next of kin is something that we prioritize in situations like this, so we'll continue to keep in close contact with them and to help them out in any way we can. We search the water portion first. Survivability in a situation like this, we're reaching the end of the survivability window. The best case for survivability for this individual would have been had he made it ashore. So in the hopes of finding him alive, we're searching the shoreline now. There's a reason why we search beyond survivability in certain cases. We will do that in this case as well, but we do need to manage expectations. We're deeply concerned, as I said in the opening statement, and this situation is, the opportunity for a positive outcome is declining rapidly.
And we'll have more from this afternoon's Coast Guard briefing in St. John's in about 19 minutes. Meantime, the community of Fleur-de-Lis has been hit hard by this tragedy. Here and Now's Colleen Connors has more on how the community is coping.
A cod fishing trip that went horribly wrong in a community where everybody knows everybody. Police got word yesterday afternoon of the sunken vessel just 100 meters off the shore in Fleur-de-Lis. And it was local fishermen that rescued 1 man and recovered the bodies of 2 others. That 1 man who survived needed very little medical attention and is doing just fine tonight. Let's take a closer look at these areas. The 4 men are from 2 small communities on the Baie Verte Peninsula, Fleur-de-Lis and Coachman's Cove, 2 coastal fishing towns along Route 410, maybe 3-4 kilometers apart by water. There is still a tremendous effort underway to find the missing harvester. Several Coast Guard vessels are involved, along with many local fishermen who are out searching the area. A Canadian Forces Cormorant helicopter, search and rescue teams from Deer Lake, Grand Falls, Windsor, and Springdale, and the RCMP Underwater Recovery Team are also involved in the search.
The sea has brought us a lot of blessings, but it can be a cruel master at times, and this community experienced that yesterday.
Rideout is home in Fleur-de-Lis, and he paints a picture of how people are feeling today.
A shock is one way of putting it, I suppose, but it's like we're all going around as zombies. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to say to each other. When you see a person, you don't know where to start the conversation. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy for any community, but particularly a small community where everybody is so close-knit.
Now, Fleur-de-Lis is a small town of 150 people. Rideout says that those who died were connected to the fishery. The Stewardship Cod Fishery opened this past weekend, and the town opened its doors and its hearts today, encouraging residents to come by to talk, chat, and grieve together at the town hall. The RCMP says there is an investigation into what caused this vessel to sink, and it's working with Transport Canada and Workplace NL, and the Chief Medical Examiner is also involved.
It's absolutely terrible, what an impact on the peninsula and the families and the fishing industry of this province.
Pretty calls this whole thing a terrible tragedy. He's been following it since last night, and he says the union will take on its own investigation into what happened.
And we will take that results of that investigation and filter it through our safety committee to ensure that if there are lessons to be learned, that harvesters will have the benefit of those lessons.
But for now, the focus is still on these two communities, Fleur-de-Lis and Coachman's Cove, while they plan funerals there and still search for one missing man. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, staying in Fleur-de-Lis, the local priest says he's been speaking with the families of the people aboard the vessel. Father Camillus Ekadobi is a Roman Catholic priest. He arrived at the community church for a wake last night and was surprised to find the space half filled with people waiting for word on the fate of the four men.
It was sad. It was a sad moment. It was weeping. It was grief all through. You know, it was regret. It was so bad for everybody. They were so sad. It was so sad that such a thing could befall them. So unbearable.
And this is a developing story that will continue to follow tonight. As I mentioned, one person is still missing. More from the Coast Guard, as well as reaction from the community of Fleur-de-Lis. That's ahead on Here and Now. Moving to news from the courts now, a man facing a second-degree murder trial has changed his plea to guilty. Dwayne Eugene Ginn pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter yesterday in Supreme Court in St. John's. In June of last year, police were called to help a man with serious injuries outside of a boarding house in Kilbride. 41-year-old Mark Hamlin died of his injuries shortly after being taken to hospital. 39-year-old Ginn was arrested a day later at a bar on George Street. He's been in custody ever since, and yesterday he changed his plea to guilty. Ginn will be sentenced at Supreme Court on December 7th. Well, a nurse at a long-term care facility in St. John's is off the job, and an investigation is underway into possible misconduct involving vulnerable residents. Here Now's Terry Roberts has more from our newsroom, but first a warning: some viewers may find the details disturbing.
We recently received an anonymous tip here at the newsroom saying a registered nurse at Pleasant View Towers was taking inappropriate photos of dementia patients, that the residents' clothing had been removed, and the nurse took pictures of their genitalia, breasts, backsides, and that these pictures were being shared with colleagues. Now, I contacted the Provincial Health Authority yesterday, and late this afternoon, confirmation that a staff member has been placed on leave, that the police and other agencies have been called in, and that family members of affected residents have been notified. Here's part of the statement. NL Health Services is aware of allegations against a staff member at Pleasant View Towers long-term care facility in St. John's. Upon learning of the claims of potential misconduct, we immediately placed one staff member on leave and initiated a robust investigation process. Dignity and respect for our patients, along with their safety and well-being, is at the heart of everything we do, and there is zero tolerance in our organization for any form of abuse or neglect. The staff member will remain on leave pending the outcome of the investigation process. Now, the health authority is not confirming any of the details of what happened here. How long was this going on? Who knew and when? But action is being taken. For example, affected residents are undergoing a medical assessment. There's increased monitoring of units at the center of this investigation. Medical charts are being audited, and the health authority says supports are being offered to families affected. I also contacted the Registered Nurses Union this afternoon. Spokesman Jonathan Hamel confirmed to me that the subject of this investigation is a registered nurse. Hamel said the union will await the outcome of the investigation and is not commenting. Now, if all this is true, it's not the first time for this province. Last year, there were similar incidents at long-term care facilities in central and western Newfoundland. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Not a whole lot of change in the forecast today as far as what we were seeing yesterday. A lot more gray skies today, but we do have some periods of rain moving in. As far as temperatures are concerned this afternoon, generally in the teens, reaching a little bit above that, though, as you head towards the west coast. Stephenville topped out about 22 degrees this afternoon. Corner Brook, 21. Temperatures across Labrador, warmest. Nain, 19 degrees today. whereas Cartwright, you sat around 16 for a good chunk of the afternoon. Take a look at the temperatures from where they were yesterday at this time. Up a couple of degrees, certainly. Down a bit in Churchill Falls, but the temperature up about 8 degrees in Makkovik this afternoon. We do still have that ridge of high pressure offshore that's keeping us in easterly flow, hence some of those cooler temperatures. If you're away from that, that's why you saw that warmer air. Our next weather maker, this area of low pressure, that is going to bring some rain up to portions of Labrador as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. It's going to tap into some tropical moisture and bring some heavy rain at times. We'll get into those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, a man in his 50s is dead after crashing his ATV on a rail bed in St. George's this morning. Bay St. George RCMP say first responders arrived on the scene shortly after 8 o'clock. The ATV had left the trail while attempting to turn around and slid down an embankment. The man was wearing a helmet but died at the scene. Police say the investigation is ongoing. Well, a Newfoundland man who spent his formative years at the Whitburn Boys' Home has taken his protest to Ottawa. Jack Whalen estimates he spent more than 700 days in solitary confinement as a teen, but he's been told he can't sue because he's out of time. Now he's on a tour for change. Ryan Cook reports.
Jack Whalen is a long way from home, sharing his story with anyone who will listen.
Some days it's easier, some days it isn't, right? You get frustrated, but other days you know, somebody buys you dinner and you're like, you know, somebody's actually listening.
Whalen has spent the last 3 days at the National Human Rights Monument in Ottawa, a place dedicated to historic struggles to obtain and safeguard fundamental human rights. Whalen is familiar with struggle. He built this box to showcase his own. He estimates he spent 730 days in solitary confinement at the Whitburn Boys' Home between the ages of 13 and 17. Whalen's trying to sue the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, but he can't. It's one of only 2 provinces with a statute of limitations on childhood physical abuse, and Whalen is out of time. He started his protest in St. John's and then stopped in New Brunswick en route to Ottawa.
When was the last time this law was looked at? You know, like, is it necessary, or why just the citizens of Newfoundland and New Brunswick that don't have the same rights as everybody else?
He sits outside the monument while his wife and sister collect signatures for their petition. Whalen says he's been uplifted by the stories of others while protesting.
It's very comforting to know that people are listening and people are actually getting something from what I'm doing. I had one lady contact me and say that for 60 years she's been living what happened to her. She said, "It doesn't go away, does it?" I said, "Well, it hasn't for me, but you know, you got to keep trying." And so I think I am reaching some people, right?
Whalen will spend some time in Ontario before coming home for the fall sitting of the legislature. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Indigenous leaders, fish harvesters, and representatives of the seal products industry all spoke at a public Senate hearing in St. John's today. It's part of a study of Canada's seal populations. Union leader Greg Priddy has some strong words about why the industry is in a difficult place.
I've been around. I'm of a certain vintage. We had a pretty good seal industry here. We had the products that you saw. We had them. We had the beautiful coats. We had, you name it, we had it. We had seal oil. We did all of that. It's all done. But it was all crushed. It was crushed by outside forces. And we never had a champion in Ottawa to stand for us. You know, we had a lot of lip service. But, you know, the fish harvesters that I represent, over 33,000 plus, would be into this fishery if we had a fishery. But we've been knocked out of business.
Fridays for Future is organizing a climate march in St. John's this week. The group will lead the march from Munn to the Confederation Building as part of a global climate strike on Friday. They're calling for an end to fossil fuel subsidies and exploration, investments in green projects, and for the university to divest from oil and gas. An organizer says a lot could be lost if changes aren't made.
We know that there's climate-related risks to health, food security, water supply, human security, and economic growth. This is something that we've known. This is something that's been in the news. People aren't talking about it. We got 8,000 people to protest 4 years ago, and we're still seeing oil and gas projects be sanctioned. We're still seeing government subsidies being given, and we have seen no change from the provincial government whatsoever. So I think it's far past time to be nice to these people, and I think we really have to start talking, and that's what this strike is about.
Well, shopping carts aren't the only things rolling down the aisles at a Coleman's grocery store in St. John's. The store has also rolled out a new robot shopkeep named Foodie. It helps keep the shelves stocked, but Foodie's main job is to keep customers entertained.
Hi, my name is Sasha Prasad. I am the communications coordinator for Coleman's, and this is Foodie, our interactive robot in Newfoundland Drive.
And what's it been like having Foodie here at Coleman's so far?
It's been really pleasant. It's a fun thing that customers look forward to, especially the kids. They love running after it. Customers just having like a little bit of fun and chuckle down the aisle. Just something for a little bit more interactive for them to see. On its belly, you can see how the products are being made and some recipe ideas and just some general details. And it winks at you. See, it's greeting us right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
Are we going to see robots taking over the grocery store anytime soon, do you think?
In the industry in general?
No, here.
Oh, no, definitely not. Again, it's, we do embrace innovation as much as possible. When we have cool opportunities like this, we'd love to seize it. But it's all about striking the balance of who we are, and I'm finding a good fit for it. So this one, again, we love it more so for the product promotions, educating customers on our new products, and we love it for the engagement and the fun it brings for our customers. And that's where we see it right now.
Well, rain is on the way, heavy at times for parts of the province as we get into tomorrow and then eventually into Friday. I'll break all that down for you coming up.
Returning now to our top story, the sinking of a commercial cod boat off Fleur-de-Lis. 2 men are dead, 1 has been rescued, and another man is still missing. The Canadian Coast Guard gave an update on the search this afternoon. Regional Supervisor Mark Gould spoke with reporters, and he was first asked about how the survivor was rescued.
That happened before we were notified, actually. A vessel of opportunity came upon the incident and responded and rescued the 1 individual and recovered the 2 others. At that point, they called Labrador Coast Guard radio, which was the first indication that we had of a distress situation.
And he was found on the shoreline?
We believe so. The search area being searched, it's a rocky and cliff shoreline, which means it's a little difficult to search, but we've had aircraft and helicopters on scene. They've been able to search the shoreline effectively. Our biggest challenge right now is communication. There's no cell service in the area, so we're relying on radio communication and satellite communication with our assets.
Can you tell us about the local people who have been pitching in to help you guys?
Yeah, there's always a large local support for search and rescue missions like this. There are numerous small boats from the community that have responded and are searching the area. They provide excellent local knowledge and are able to search shorelines really effectively, so we're very appreciative of that support.
Can you speak to the amount of resources that have been deployed for this situation?
We were very this happened within range of 2 Coast Guard SAR stations, so we were fortunate to have 2 cutters within range, as well as a large asset that could provide support. Coast Guard Auxiliary, as always, have stepped up to help us as well, and Fleur-de-Lis is close to our Gander RCAF station, so the helicopter has also been really close.
Is there any role for Coast Guard, like in providing information, support, anything of that nature to the families of the people who are affected by this?
Absolutely. We've been in contact with the next of kin for the missing individual throughout and providing regular updates.
And beyond that, is there anything that Coast Guard's obliged to do or is doing?
We will continue to keep them updated and discuss the operation. Our communication with the next of kin is something that we prioritize in situations like this, so we'll continue to keep in close contact with them and to help them out in any way we can.
The RCMP sent out a release a little while ago saying that the search had been expanded to land. Can you speak to why that decision was made?
We searched the water portion first. Survivability in a situation like this, we're reaching the end of the survivability window. The best case for survivability for this individual would have been had he made it ashore. So in the hopes of finding him alive, we're searching the shoreline now.
Were any of the individuals wearing survival suits or life jackets of any kind of personal flotation devices?
I don't have that information right now.
I'm curious, what are the next steps for the rescue?
The search will continue throughout the day. We'll work with partner agencies on the next step. But right now, like I said, we're just going to keep looking, and hopefully we can find this person alive. At a certain point, we'll reach a stage where there's no longer any reasonable chance of survival, and we'll have to approach that when that time comes.
And how long do you expect to be able to search? As you said, you're probably reaching the edge now, or the end of the survivability for an individual who'd be in the water. How long will you continue?
We're having those discussions. We'll look at the data and the evidence that we have and what we've been able to achieve so far, and we'll make that decision when the time comes. But we haven't made a decision yet.
You're not there yet.
What message would you have for those that are still holding out hope that this person can still be found?
There's a reason why we search beyond survivability in certain cases. We will do that in this case as well, but we do need to manage expectations. We're deeply concerned, as I said in the opening statement, and this situation is, the opportunity for a positive outcome is declining rapidly. All these incidents hit communities really hard. Everyone that we've coordinated in the 6 years that I've been in SAR coordination, the communities have been hit hard, not just the individuals, but the whole town. I think that's just indicative of Newfoundland and Labrador and how close people are.
This weather update is brought to you by Steamatic Canada, the undisputed choice in restoration. Don't panic. Call Steamatic.
Time for a look at the weather. And Ashley, you're still keeping a close eye on Hurricane Franklin. What's the latest on how it could affect us?
Hurricane Lee.
Oh,
this time
gosh.
you're one hurricane
Yes.
behind.
There's so many of them.
There has been a lot, for sure. It has been a very active hurricane season so far, and the latest one to affect Atlantic Canada is Hurricane Lee, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Temperatures today, you know, sitting in the teens into the 20s as you head towards the west coast up across Labrador as well, and the reason for that, again, is a ridge of high pressure to the east of us. And if we take a look at the humidex values right now, we are looking at a little bit of humidity starting to creep up. Stephenville feeling more like 26, and Port aux Basques feeling more like 22, Corner Brook feeling more like 24. So as we head through the next couple of days, we are going to start to see some of that humidity move back in as we sit under a tropical air mass. So this right here is the moisture associated with Hurricane Lee. And then we can see some of that moisture being directed across the Maritimes, particularly in this case Nova Scotia, and then eventually us through Thursday evening and then into Friday morning. That is going to bring some enhanced rainfall as we head through through the weekend rather, and also some more moisture, some more humid air mass as well. Now, as far as what's going to happen with the hurricane, we're going to see that eventually track between pretty much Nova Scotia and Maine, and then eventually become a remnant low as we head through the weekend. So no direct impacts expected for us here in Newfoundland and Labrador. But right now, this is what Hurricane Lee is currently a Category 2 hurricane. Sustained winds at about 165 kilometers per hour, with wind gusts about 205. It started its turn north and right now is only moving about 16 kilometers an hour. As it continues to track north into colder water, encounter some more wind shear, it is going to continue to weaken. But at this point, by Saturday afternoon, looking that it will make landfall, like I said, somewhere between Nova Scotia and the United States there as a Category 1 hurricane. And then eventually, as it makes its way over land, will weaken, will become a remnant low, and then head our way as we get into Sunday into Monday timeframe. Now, note what happens. Winds, you know, sustained at about 120 kilometers per hour. Those are the strongest winds associated with it. As we get into Sunday afternoon, much weaker winds, only about 85 kilometers per hour. And then once it makes its turn towards us, only between 70 to as much as 80 kilometers per hour. So definitely weakening and really no significant impacts expected. But I just wanted to show you kind of the wind gust potential over the next couple of days. The wind field is quite large with this system. The yellows that you see there between 40 and 60 kilometers per hour, you get in now, like I said, the sustained winds are at about 160 at the moment. So that's more of your really light colors there. As it heads north, I should say, by the time we get into Friday evening, we're starting to see some of the heavier winds start to approach the Atlantic provinces. And then by the time we get into the afternoon on Friday, you can see how large that wind field is. Areas from Boston or maybe even further west, even to the southwestern portion of Newfoundland and Labrador, we'll be seeing those winds gusting between 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, the strongest, which could be about 110 to 120 kilometers per hour. Now, the winds will eventually ease as it heads over land, and we're looking at those winds gusting, topping out in the southwestern portion of the province somewhere between 40 to 60, maybe even 70 kilometers per hour by the time we get into Sunday evening. So at this point, not super significant weather for us, but we will see some rain associated with this one as well. Already seeing some rain towards the west, and that will move towards Labrador as we head through the night tonight and into tomorrow. And it is going to bring some of the heavier rain with it as it does that as well. So we'll see some of that work its way in over the course of the night tonight, and then eventually towards the coastal areas as we head into Thursday morning. And a pretty quiet day weather-wise across the island tomorrow. Eventually we'll see some of that heavier rain move in Thursday night, and that will work its way through Friday. across the island, bringing some rainfall with it as well. We'll get into some of the more details on how much rain we can expect when I come back.
It's kind of strange on the one hand, in our family never talked about it, and then here there's such an openness about it and such a focus.
Two American brothers explore their connection to Botwood. Just ahead, the search and deep dive for their grandfather's downed plane. That feature story just ahead. Welcome back to Here and Now. Well, there's a lot lurking beneath the water in Botwood Harbor, remnants from the town's glory days as a World War II base. But nothing has drawn more interest over the years than the Excalibur, a doomed flight in 1942 that claimed 11 lives. There's been a renewed interest in the crash this summer from the family members of one of those 11 people. Here and Now's Ryan Cook brings us this special report on a plane crash and enduring grief and the quest for closure.
Botwood, Newfoundland is a mural town. Paintings give life to its previous incarnations, including the town's time as a World War II base. It was here on October 3rd, 1942, that the massive Excalibur flying ace took off, carrying 37 people. It failed to gain altitude, slamming back down into the water. 11 people died that day as a town watched in horror.
They remember the screaming. They kept hearing screaming, and that would have been from the passengers getting out. That would have been from the air hostess who was getting them out.
Those screams have echoed over Botwood for 81 years, becoming part of the fabric and folklore of this place. But for one of those 11 families, there was only silence.
We know very little about our grandfather, just because it was never really discussed at home. It was such a sad issue in the family.
Crawford Lansing was killed that evening in 1942. He left behind a 6-month-old son. His grandkids are now searching for information to honor that child Crawford left behind.
I hardly remember talking to our father about his father. I mean, he was 6 months old. I think it was a very sad subject for him. Our father had actually a severe fear of flying, which I think probably had something to do with this. And yeah, he didn't really want to talk about it.
The Lansings knew nothing of Excalibur until they began researching 3 years ago. They were stunned by what they found.
After our father died, we're always sort of trying to find different pieces of connection to him. And we started researching this crash more. And we had no idea how well documented it was. We had no idea about the impact that it had in this town. And so we really started to do a lot of work, and we realized it was sort of like pulling on a string. And after a period of time, got more and more information.
A lot of that information came from Lisa Himian.
What was your first reaction when they reached out to you?
I was so excited.
After 3 years of pandemic delays, a meeting. Himian showed the Lansing brothers and Garrity's 2 sons around the Flying Boat Museum, spending extra time on items from the Excalibur, including its propeller. But the Lansings weren't just here to see the museum.
My brother and I like to do some crazy stuff here and there. We've gone to Alaska, we've gone surfing in Nazaré, and so this is just sort of like, well, we should go dive the site and see if it's there.
Enter Ocean Quest. The St. John's Adventure Company signed on to help outfit the Lansings and help search for the wreckage. They had some help from U.S. forces, which dove to the site in 2008 and 2014, in a futile search for the 4 bodies that were never recovered. And so on a misty morning in mid-August 2023, the Lansings set out in search of the Excalibur. Their mission was a needle in a haystack. Several failed attempts to salvage the plane had scattered its remains across a wide area. After some scouring, the boat hovered over a spot in about 40 feet of water. Even in August, the water here is a frigid 7 degrees Celsius, an inhospitable environment for amateur divers. They set out in teams of 2, passing jellyfish and junk, in search of something, anything resembling the aircraft. And then, sitting in a shallow layer of sediment, a steel pipe, closely resembling the support beams beneath Excalibur's wings. A small discovery, sure, but a significant one for the Lansing family.
It felt like an actual mission, and when the photographer pointed, that's something to look at, that's a piece of the plane, it felt like this was like a sort of real mission for us and our family.
As the day came to a close, so did the Lansing's time in Botwood. They may not have found a hulking flying boat, but they did find what they were looking for.
It gave me a lot of comfort because, again, like in our family, it's something we never talked about. It's kind of strange on the one hand, in our family, and we experienced the sort of death firsthand, I guess, and the loss, never talked about it. And then here, there's such an openness about it and such a focus. And I mean, definitely the latter is the better way to deal with it.
Ryan Cook, CBC News, Botwood.
You don't know where to start the conversation. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy for any community, but particularly a small community where everybody is so close-knit.
Tragedy on the Baie Verte Peninsula. A community holds out hope that one man missing at sea might still be found. Returning now to the developing situation in Fleur-de-Lis tonight. 2 men are dead following the sinking of a commercial cod boat off the northeast coast of the island. 1 man has been rescued. A 4th is still missing. One resident of Fleur-de-Lis, former Premier Tom Rideout, says this is a devastating blow to a tight-knit community.
Well, it's been a very difficult experience for everybody. I mean, this is a very small rural community. I suppose if there's 150 people here, year-round residents now is as much as it is. A bit more in the summertime when all of us sort of congregate back home for a few weeks or months. But, you know, it's a devastating blow to the community, a terrible accident, probably the only multiple loss to the sea accident that I can recall in my lifetime. And you know, I'm mid-70s now. It's a terrible time in the community. I mean, there's already been 3 deaths and the 3rd burial today in this community for other residents, some of them older. But now we're looking at 3 more pending, and it's difficult to explain, but I mean, everybody feels it because everybody is friends and everybody is related. You know, my next door neighbor, who I can look out and see his house next to mine, 2 of those people are related to that household. So it's you can imagine what it's like, I'm sure, in a small rural Newfoundland community where everybody is knows each other and is affected so deeply by this. Most of the immediate family, wives, sisters, brothers, father of the 2 victims that live here in the community. The other one is from Coachman's Cove, which is right next door to Fleur-de-Lis, 3 or 4 or 5 kilometers, I suppose, by water. So, you know, everybody, I don't know, it's hard to find words to describe it. I mean, a shock is one way of putting it, I suppose, but it's like we're all going around as zombies. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to say to each other. When you see a person, you don't know where to start the conversation. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy for any community, but particularly a small community where everybody is so close-knit. I mean, a couple of those people that we lost yesterday, I suppose all 3 of them, but certainly 2 of them I know personally, and they're great volunteers in the community. And in this community of 150 people, can't afford to lose that kind of leadership and enthusiasm that works so hard to try to keep it alive. So it's felt by everybody, and everybody is feeling it equally. Of course, you know, the families are foremost in everybody's thoughts, but everybody is affected to some degree or other here. They are families that come from a fishing background. You know, some of them fish when the fishing season is open, I mean. Some of them fish full time and do nothing else, and others do other things in between. One of them I know was retired and sort of helping out in the fishery with a friend or a relative. So it revolves around the commercial fishery that's been, you know, that just started up recently. Yes, the local boat owners have been organized and been on the water last night and today, and there is still a person missing, as you know. There's been 2 recovered, and there's still 1 missing, and the effort is tremendous and gigantic and still underway.
At least 2,900 people are confirmed dead and 5,500 injured after Morocco's devastating earthquake last Friday. The government has accepted help from some countries, but it's under growing pressure to accept more. The greatest destruction happened in remote rural villages of the Atlas Mountains. Relief camps are set up in accessible areas, but frustration is mounting, with aid yet to reach some survivors. Morocco has limited aid into the country and accepted response crews from only 4 countries. Canada has announced it will match donations made to the Canadian Red Cross for Moroccan earthquake relief efforts up to $3 million. Canada's Federal Housing Agency continues to sound the alarm about the shortage of homes in this country. A new report released today updates the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's supply gaps estimate. CMHC says Canada will need to build an additional 3.5 million housing units by 2030 in order to return home prices to affordable levels. Those additional units are on top of the 18 million that are already expected to be built during that time. CMHC uses home prices from 2004 as its baseline for affordability. At that time, an average household would have to devote 40 to 45% of its disposable income to the purchase of a home. Now it takes more than 60% on average. Canada's housing shortage has implications that go beyond the soaring cost of homes and high rents. An inability to find a place to live can prevent people from taking jobs in some communities. And sometimes those jobs are in essential services like healthcare. The government of Nova Scotia is facing that problem, and it's attempting a novel solution. The CBC's Jean LaRoche has that story.
The last guests checked out of this motel just weeks ago. These 18 rooms are being turned into studio apartments. That likely means tearing down some of the brick walls to create kitchens and living rooms, and that's going to take time.
We're optimistic that in July, August of next year that we'll be opening the doors to residents. I think it's important to keep in mind the shortage of construction workers across the province. We face that in the same way the private sector does, as well as escalating costs.
Although these are not temporary accommodations, the thinking is people who live here won't be staying all that long.
We expect that after a year or two they will move. If they've settled into the community, we'll find something else. That would be the expectation.
The plan is to install 6 modular townhouses on the land behind the hotel. All told, this is an almost $5 million project. All of it designed primarily to house staff at the nearby hospital or the care home on the other side of town. The incoming mayor is sold on the concept.
Unfortunately, at times it's closed, not so much for any other reason but lack of workers, and a lot of it has to do with the fact they just can't, like I said earlier, find a place to live, to move here, so they very well can't work here if they can't live here.
Rents will be scaled to income, so those making more will pay more, and if there's room for non-healthcare workers, they'll have a shot at living here too.
We certainly will not leave a unit vacant in the current housing shortage here in Lunenburg or anywhere else in the province.
Bishop says similar announcements are coming soon in other communities. Jean LaRoche, CBC News, Lunenburg.
All right, so now we're going to have a look at the long-range forecast, and I guess that means we get to look ahead a little bit into the weekend.
We do, yeah. I'm going to just track back a little bit just to kind of show you what's tonight and tomorrow, because I never did get to that forecast earlier. Let's take a quick look at tonight's forecast. So temperatures are going to be in the teens for the most part, still single digits up across Labrador, but really the forecast over the week, for the rest of the week, I should say, is actually going to warm up from this. So we're going to start to see some of that humidity move in, especially tomorrow night as we get into more of a tropical air mass. But for now, we're still going to hang on to temperatures in the upper teens to the east as you head towards the west, pretty much where we were sitting today. And then temperatures are going to start to warm up across Labrador as well, with those winds changing to south or southeasterlies from a change from those easterlies. Now, rain in the forecast as well. This will take us through to Friday afternoon. We could be seeing pockets of 20+ millimeters of rain, especially through parts of Labrador towards the coast and then the southwestern portion of the province as well. This is as we tap into some of the moisture, the tropical moisture from Lee, enhancing some of that rainfall, at least some of the rainfall amounts. So some of these showers will be heavy at times, but for the southwestern portion of the province, we could be talking between 30 to 50 millimeters. As we head into Friday, warmer weather, more humid weather, so expect that along with the showers or periods of rain continuing for most of the day. We'll start to see some clearing up across parts of Labrador, but you're still looking at that chance of showers. Staying cool for Nain, only about 8 degrees for your Friday, but temperatures climbing to the upper teens, low 20s for the rest of the Big Land. And again, that humidity as well. As we head into Saturday, a bit of a dip in those temperatures. We'll start to see some of the winds picking up for the southwestern portion of the province. 60, 70 kilometers per hour, may see a bit higher than that in the Wreck House area. And up across Labrador, your quiet weather for now anyway, 10 to about 17 degrees through the afternoon with a mix of sun and cloud through the day. And then as far as the long range forecast is concerned, we start talking about the potential for some heavier rain as we get into Sunday. Overall temperatures around the 20-degree mark. As we head into Monday, we'll start to see some clearing, at least in the afternoon, and our overnight lows will still be in the teens. Now for central Newfoundland, we're looking at temperatures climbing as we get into Sunday, around 22 degrees, and again feeling humid. That will be the remnants of Lee, and Monday will be about 14 degrees drop in temperatures as we head through the overnight, and then pretty much periods of rain for western Newfoundland Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. That will be showers through the afternoon, and your daytime highs will sit around 17 degrees. Now for eastern Labrador, we're looking at Saturday looking fairly quiet, Sunday some showers, and then into Monday we're looking at a temperature around 13 degrees with some cloudy periods. And then for western Labrador, a nice stretch of weather until we get to Saturday and Sunday, and then by Monday around 12 degrees, and some rain will move in. So I know we've been showing a lot of sunset pictures lately because they're my favorite, but this is another one of my favorites. This is the Northern Lights. This was last night. I got a few photos, in fact, of the Northern Lights. Season's coming back.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like the Northern Lights match the
building.
Curve of the building there. It's so neat.
Very nice, yeah. So this was in Nain. Thank you so much for that great shot, and hopefully we'll see lots more of that in the future. But if you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, you can send them to Facebook or email them. That's the best place, nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Just beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Deirdre. Well, that about does it for this Wednesday evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, CBC News will be following the developing situation on the Baie-Verte Peninsula and the search for a man still missing at sea. You can find all of the latest details on our website, cbc.ca/nl. Well, that's it for us. Good night.
Good night.